Each year, the Ashland Film Festival and the Schneider Museum of Art at Southern Oregon University, here in Ashland, partner on an exhibition that explores a theme of interest to both organizations. Because of COVID-19, the exhibition, titled Migrating Bodies, Forsaking Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness, which would have run concurrently with the film festival in April, was postponed until August 8th. I'm Jill Hartz, former executive director of the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art at the University of Oregon and co-curator of the exhibition, along with Richard Herskowitz, artistic director of AIFF, and Scott Malborn, director of the Schneider Museum of Art. The show is made possible by the Ford Family Foundation, which is based in Oregon. The exhibition, as its title suggests, is about global migration. Humans have always been on the move. From nomads to nation builders, we have sought a better life, however we've chosen to define that goal. The causes of migration and displacement, including climate change and its attendant famines, fires, and floods, war, religious persecution, slavery, and financial crises, seem unending and are, if anything, growing more dire. According to the UN Refugee Agency's annual Global Trends Report, released in June 2019, nearly 70.8 million people were displaced at the end of 2018, with around 13.6 million newly exiled during the year. While many of us hope that current catastrophic global situations will elicit compassion and an outpouring of aid, more often than not, refugees strain local resources, and too many world leaders see them as threats to their cultures and pawns in their political strategies. With the global COVID-19 pandemic, migrant and refugee camps are especially vulnerable. And for the United States, a country whose immigrant populations have defined our nation, a bitter fight is underway. White House-supported forces of bigotry and privilege are launching daily inhuman attacks on refugees and citizens of color and those who support a multi-ethnic society. We are ironically on the precipice of turning into a country from which people yearning to be free are excluded or decide to emigrate. The artists in Migrating Bodies address this complex subject from personal and historical perspectives. I'm going to start with Mohau Modisakeng, who was born in 1986 in Soweto, South Africa. Some of you may be familiar with his work, Passage, a 3-channel video piece that was commissioned by the South African Department of Arts and Culture for the 57th Venice Biennale. I bought this work for the Schnitzer Museum a few years back and will be borrowing it for the exhibition. According to the artist, Passage is a meditation on slavery's dismemberment of African identity and its enduring erasure of personal histories. In each of the artist's projections, we are confronted with a character: a woman with a hawk perched on her arm, a young man in a trilby hat, and a woman wrapped in a Basotho blanket, each traveling with a single possession. As the passengers lie motionless on their backs looking up at the sky, they perform a series of actions that move between gestures of struggle and resignation. The rising water gradually floods the well of the boat, eventually leaving the passengers submerged, while the boat slowly sinks and eventually disappears. In Setswana, the experience of life is referred to as a passage, or literally a crossing over, and humans are voyagers. Life is transient. It has a beginning and an end, as with any voyage. In Passage, the ebb and flow of water, as both life-giving and deadly, symbolizes the many who have arrived or departed from South Africa in trade, as cargo or as transient bodies belonging to no particular state. Water as a metaphor for the passage of life gains immediacy in the multiple monitor installation Flight from 2019 by American artists Deborah Oropallo and Andy Rappaport. Boats again perform the passage and can be nearly anything that can float, with far too many on board. As they approach land, the multitude gets personalized as faces come into focus, revealing expressions of courage, desperation, fear, loss, and hope. In the Superflex film Kwassa by Tuan Andrew Nguyen, the boat takes on new resonance as we watch a shipbuilder construct a poured resin boat on an island between Madagascar and Mozambique. Once used for fishing, boats like this one are being repurposed to transport migrants, buoyed by hopes for a better life, to a nearby French territory. To date, however, more than 10,000 men, women, and children have already died trying to cross the roughly 70 kilometers separating the start and end of the voyage, a French outpost. Fittingly, the title, Kwassa, means an unstable boat in the language of the Comoro Islands. An immigrant himself, MacArthur Fellow and performance artist Guillermo Gomez-Peña, who was born in Mexico and lives in LA, affirms Chicano culture in both aesthetic and harrowing ways. In the mixed media piece, Doc Undoc, Documentado Undocumented, Ars Shamanic Performatica from 2017, he and his artist collaborators, Felicia Rice, Gustavo Vasquez, and Zachary Watkins, ask us to consider what it means to be documented or undocumented. The final artist in the show, Tannaz Farsi, was born in Iran and teaches at the University of Oregon. In her multi-layered pieces, she expresses her own complicated immigrant experience, simultaneously respecting traditional cultural objects and practices and repurposing them for new, potentially evasive meanings and aesthetic purposes. The four works in Wayfinding position the circulation of information and objects through a familial and cultural lens. These artists were all selected to complement the migrations theme in this year's film festival, and you can see their powerful works at Ashland Schneider Museum of Art